In a time when so many people chase after power through noise, influence, fame, or dominance, there exists a completely different kind of power that is calm, composed, and nearly invisible to the untrained eye. This is the quiet power the Stoics speak of as strength, not rooted in controlling others, but in mastering oneself. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most renowned Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, understood this better than most. His writings, especially in Meditations, reflect the soul of a man who wielded immense external power, yet valued inner stillness above all. He knew that true power does not come from external circumstances, but from internal discipline, clarity, and peace. The kind of power the Stoics teach is not about being loud or seen. It's about being unshakable in the midst of life's storms, about standing firm when others fall apart, about keeping one's integrity when everyone else compromises. The first Stoic rule that leads to this quiet power is the ability to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. Marcus Aurelius emphasized this repeatedly, noting that while we may not have control over the events that happen around us, we always have control over our thoughts, reactions, and decisions. This is not a theory but a practice. It means not allowing your peace to be hijacked by other people's behavior. It means choosing to stay calm even when circumstances tempt you to panic. It means recognizing that frustration is often born from trying to control the uncontrollable. When we internalize this truth, we become like a rock in the river, unmoved by the current, unbothered by the noise, and quietly strong. The second Stoic rule is to live by principles rather than by emotions, trends, or impulses. In a society where most people are led by what feels good in the moment, the Stoic chooses what is right instead. Marcus Aurelius didn't make decisions based on popularity or fear. He based them on virtue. That meant he committed to courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom regardless of the cost. He wrote to himself to remember not to act if the action wasn't aligned with integrity. That kind of personal standard builds immense inner power. Because when a person lives by principles, they don't get swayed easily, they don't compromise under pressure, they don't need approval to validate their choices, they operate with a kind of internal compass that always points to the true north. This consistency builds respect over time, not just from others, but from oneself. It's hard to shake a man who has already decided what he stands for, and it's even harder to defeat someone who's not fighting for power, but living from it. The third rule, often misunderstood, is the voluntary practice of discomfort. While the modern world teaches us to avoid pain, avoid struggle, and avoid hardship, the Stoic deliberately embraces it in small ways. Marcus Aurelius didn't believe in softening the soul through luxury. Instead, he trained himself to face hardship with grace. This didn't mean punishing himself for no reason. It meant choosing discipline over indulgence. It meant walking through the cold when a warm ride was available. It meant sleeping on the ground when a soft bed was within reach, not because he needed to suffer, but because he needed to remember that he could endure. Quiet power comes from that kind of resilience. The person who voluntarily chooses what is hard becomes strong enough to endure what is unexpected. They become immune to panic. They become confident in their toughness. They become calm in the face of chaos because they have already tested themselves and know what they are capable of. This builds not arrogance, but humility, and in that humility lives a power that speaks without words. The fourth rule of Stoic power is the ability to reframe obstacles into opportunities. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not just poetic language. It's a way of thinking that changes how we experience failure, setbacks, and adversity. Instead of seeing a problem as the end, the Stoic sees it as a beginning, a chance to grow, a chance to demonstrate strength. A chance to rise. Life is full of difficulties, but the Stoic does not expect it to be easy. They are not surprised when things go wrong. They are prepared, and more than that, They are determined to use the very things that try to stop them as fuel. When others break under pressure, the Stoic gets sharper. When others avoid pain, the Stoic uses it to build endurance. When others are paralyzed by loss, the Stoic sees a new direction. This shift in thinking turns you from a victim into a student of life. And from that mindset emerges a quiet power that needs no explanation. It simply shows up, strong and ready. The fifth rule is the constant remembrance of death, known in Stoic practice as memento mori asterisk. While this may sound grim to modern ears, it was for Marcus Aurelius a source of clarity and purpose. By remembering that life is short and that death could come at any moment, he lived with urgency, gratitude, and deep presence. This wasn't meant to cause fear, but to wake the soul up. When you remember that you are mortal, you don't waste time on petty arguments. You don't delay what matters. You don't chase status at the cost of your soul. You focus, you let go of resentment, you speak honestly, you act with intention, you love deeply, you work with care, and because of that, your life becomes a quiet testament to power, not the power of domination, but the power of depth. A man who remembers death is not easily shaken. He is not impressed by vanity. He is not worried about tomorrow's uncertainty. He lives today fully, and in that way, he becomes untouchable by fear and unstoppable in purpose. Marcus Aurelius looked at death not as an enemy but as a teacher, and that teacher, though severe, teaches us how to live, not in fear, but in strength. When Marcus Aurelius governed the Roman Empire, he faced unimaginable pressures: war, disease, betrayal, the weight of leadership, and yet he found within himself a stillness that many people never discover even in peace. This stillness wasn't accidental. It was cultivated through philosophy, through discipline, through a set of values that gave him clarity when others were confused and gave him strength when others were falling apart. That strength is what we now call Stoicism, and its teachings offer a path to quiet power, real, enduring power that doesn't depend on anyone's recognition or validation. This power is built from the inside out. It isn't given by fortune or taken by failure. It grows every time you choose character over convenience, wisdom over impulse, discipline over desire, and the first key to unlocking it is self-control. Not the kind of control that looks good on the outside while chaos brews within, but the real kind, the inner mastery that allows you to remain composed no matter what is happening outside of you. Marcus Aurelius emphasized again and again that while you cannot control the world, you can always control your mind. That distinction is what separates those who are tossed around by life from those who navigate it with purpose. The moment you stop trying to force life to obey you and instead focus on how you respond to life, you enter the realm of quiet power. This doesn't mean you stop acting. It means you start acting from a place of strength rather than from fear or frustration. There is power in restraint, in patience, in the decision not to respond to everything that provokes you. Most people react quickly, speak impulsively, and let their emotions run their lives. The Stoic, on the other hand, takes a breath, observes the moment, and then decides what is the right thing to do, not just what feels good in the moment. That pause is powerful. That space between stimulus and response is where your strength lies. It's where your values are tested. It's where your philosophy becomes practice. Every time you pause and choose wisdom over reaction, you become stronger. Every time you remain calm in a heated moment, you develop more inner authority. And that kind of authority doesn't need to be shouted or proven. It is felt silently by others. The second layer of this power is clarity of values. Marcus Aurelius lived by a set of virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom that guided his decisions. These were not abstract ideals for him. They were the foundation of his life. He didn't let popularity, fear, or convenience sway his judgment. He made choices based on what was right, not what was easy. This clarity gave him strength. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you are no longer vulnerable to the chaos of the world. You don't have to chase every opportunity. You don't have to defend yourself against every criticism. You don't need to explain yourself every time someone misunderstands you. Your life speaks for you. Your consistency earns trust, and your actions reflect the principles you've built over time. There is no louder statement than a life lived in alignment with core values. Another aspect of quiet power is learning to endure discomfort. Modern culture promotes ease, pleasure, and instant gratification, but Stoicism teaches that strength comes from training the body and mind to endure. Marcus Aurelius didn't indulge in luxury even though he had access to it. He trained himself to live simply, to sleep on the ground, to go without, so that when adversity came, he was already prepared. He wasn't shocked by hardship. He didn't crumble under pressure. He saw pain as a teacher, not as an enemy. He understood that comfort can weaken the soul, but discipline sharpens it. Practicing voluntary discomforts, skipping a meal, walking instead of riding, going without convenience, teaches you to detach your happiness from luxury. It reminds you of how little you actually need. It teaches you that strength is not in what you possess, but in what you can live without. When you know you can endure difficulty, you carry yourself differently. You speak less because you don't need to prove anything. You move through the world with a kind of quiet confidence that comes from facing the hard things and surviving them. There is also great power in reframing adversity. One of the core teachings of Marcus Aurelius is that obstacles are not barriers, but stepping stones. Whatever stands in the way can be used as a path forward. This mindset is transformational. Most people resist pain, complain about problems, and wait for easier conditions. The Stoic sees each difficulty as a chance to grow, to develop character, to test and prove virtue. The problem becomes the training ground, the frustration becomes the sharpening stone, the loss becomes the invitation to focus on what really matters. When you stop running from obstacles and start using them, you gain an edge that most people don't have. You don't just survive hard times, you benefit from them. You become wiser, more focused, more resilient. That's the quiet power of a mind that knows how to turn pain into progress. And running through all of this is a constant awareness of mortality. Memento mori, remember you must die, was not a gloomy reminder for the Stoics. It was a call to live fully, to act now, to waste no time. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the shortness of life and the certainty of death, not to inspire fear, but to create clarity. When you realize you could die today, you stop postponing your goals, you stop caring about things that don't matter, you stop pretending that you have forever. Instead, you start showing up. You start living with intention. You begin to speak truth with more urgency. You begin to love more deeply, forgive more freely, and work with more focus. This awareness of death strips away distractions and brings your priorities into sharp focus. It gives you perspective in conflict, patience in struggle, and humility in success. Because you know it all ends one day, you choose to make each day count. That awareness makes you powerful, not in a loud, boastful way, but in a deep, enduring way. You walk through life knowing that everything is temporary, and so you cherish what is meaningful. These Stoic rules are not about suppressing emotion or becoming cold and indifferent. They are about strength, clarity, discipline, and focus. They are about finding power in stillness, in thought, in action that aligns with values. Marcus Aurelius didn't live a quiet life because he had no choice. He chose quiet strength because he knew that real power doesn't make noise. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't seek approval. It simply is. When you begin to live by these principles, you no longer need to chase validation. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to manipulate or posture. You become rooted, stable, and steady, and that is the kind of power the world cannot take from you. Marcus Aurelius, though he held the most powerful position in the world during his reign as Roman emperor, did not rely on outward displays of strength, to govern his empire or his life. Instead, he leaned on a philosophy that prized inner control, moral clarity, and spiritual endurance. That philosophy was Stoicism, and through it, Marcus discovered a kind of power not based on wealth, fame, or force, but on inner mastery. This quiet power is subtle, disciplined, and deeply transformative. It does not broadcast itself, yet it influences everything. It does not shout, yet its presence is undeniable. The modern world, with its obsession for visibility and dominance, often ignores this path, chasing influence through volume, status, and performance. But the Stoic path shows us that the most powerful people are not always the loudest. They are the ones who are calm when others are frantic, principled when others are compromising, steady when others are shaken. This strength is developed through a series of habits, perspectives, and commitments that reshape how we think, how we respond, and how we lead ourselves. One of the foundational practices that leads to quiet power is learning to detach from outcomes. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that he could only control his efforts, never the result. Whether it was military campaigns, the decisions of the Senate, or the loyalty of his allies, he knew these things ultimately lay outside his sphere of control. What he could control was his own virtue, his own choices, his own responses. This distinction between what is up to us and what is not is the basis of Stoic freedom. Most people remain prisoners of anxiety because they try to control what cannot be controlled. They worry about the opinions of others, the behavior of strangers, the timing of events, or the future that has not yet arrived. The Stoic lets go of that burden. By focusing entirely on effort and integrity, the Stoic becomes unshakable. When praise comes, it does not inflate the ego. When criticism arrives, it does not pierce the heart. When results disappoint, the inner compass remains steady. Because power is not in controlling everything around you, it is in controlling everything within you. Another critical element of Stoic power is the rejection of emotional overreaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That is a profound statement. The event is neutral. It is our interpretation that makes it painful or dramatic. The Stoic trains the mind to pause, observe, and respond with wisdom rather than emotion. This isn't suppression, it's awareness. When someone insults you, you don't need to retaliate. When plans fall apart, you don't need to panic. When the future is uncertain, you don't need to drown in worry. The Stoic breathes through the tension, watches the mind, and reminds the self that no event is inherently good or bad until judgment is passed, and judgment is within our control. Imagine the power of walking through life with that kind of composure. When people throw anger at you and you respond with calm, when adversity strikes and you remain anchored, when chaos surrounds you and you speak gently, move wisely, act with restraint. That kind of emotional sovereignty is rare, and because it is rare, it is powerful. The third principle that shapes quiet power is service to others without expectation of reward. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that he was part of a greater whole, that his duty was to contribute to society, not to extract from it. Stoic philosophy is not selfish. It is grounded in justice, in the fair and moral treatment of others. Quiet power is not about detachment from the world. It's about engaged responsibility without need for recognition. The Stoic serves because it is right, not because it will be seen. He helps others because it is part of his nature, not because it will result in applause. He forgives not because the other deserves it, but because holding on to resentment makes him weaker. This kind of silent, humble contribution builds real authority. It creates trust, it fosters respect, and it grounds influence in character rather than charisma. There is power in being someone others can depend on, even when no one is watching. Another vital aspect of the Stoic mind is simplicity in lifestyle and thought. The world tries to convince us that complexity is impressive, that accumulation is success, that more is always better. The Stoic disagrees. Marcus Aurelius lived modestly, not because he lacked resources, but because he understood that possessions often possess us. Simplicity is not about poverty. It is about clarity. It is about removing distractions that blur our judgment and drown our purpose. It is about focusing on what is essential, what is lasting, what is true. In thought, simplicity means refusing to overthink, overreact, or overanalyze. It means deciding what is right and doing it. It means saying no when it compromises your values. It means keeping your speech honest, your mind clean, and your actions pure. The quieter the life, the stronger the soul. There is power in not being attached to luxury, in not needing to impress, in not needing to compete. A simple man with purpose is more powerful than a rich man with no peace. Central to everything the Stoics taught is the constant practice of presence. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, urged himself to live in the moment, to focus on today, to do the task before him with excellence. He knew that time was fleeting, that regret comes from living in the past, and anxiety from trying to live in the future. Quiet power emerges from total presence, when you are fully engaged in what you are doing, when your mind is not scattered, your attention not divided. You operate at a level of power most never experience. You hear people more clearly, you solve problems more effectively, you speak with greater impact, you live more honestly. The Stoic walks slowly, speaks carefully, thinks deeply, and acts decisively. Not because he is superior, but because he is here now, fully awake. All these teachings form a framework that, when practiced daily, lead to a kind of quiet power that does not need to be announced. It becomes visible in your posture, your tone, your decisions, your presence. It is the strength of the one who has mastered his mind, who lives by values, who serves with humility, who endures with patience, who thinks with clarity, and who acts with calm. This is not the power of noise, of control, of outward dominance. This is the power of character, of discipline, of unwavering integrity. It is the power of the Stoic, and it is the kind of power that leaves a lasting impact without ever needing to raise its voice in a time when so many people chase after power through noise, influence, fame, or dominance. There exists a completely different kind of power that is calm, composed, and nearly